we were looking really at how to improve or enhance the environmental and climate change outcomes that we could get through RDPs and in a variety of ways, and the suggestions that people had for that. We had quite a wide-ranging discussion, which ranged from the very strategic to the very detailed and technical. So I hope I can do this justice. I've tried to summarise the discussion into some key areas that we focused on. There will inevitably be things that I missed out. But this slide just summarises the presentations we were given. We started with two context statements really from DG Agriculture. Firstly, we were introduced to the new possibilities, I suppose, and opportunities within the new rural development policy. And then an important presentation on looking at the links that there are in order to deliver for the environment between Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So the importance of using all the different measures that there are available to us to enhance greening, remembering that we have cross-compliance, we have the green direct payments, and we have the environmental measures in rural development policy. We then moved on to three very interesting presentations from different member states. We had a presentation in Germany about the way that the RDP is designed between the national framework and then the regional implementation in the Länder. We had a presentation about a new and innovative proposal to deliver agri-environment solely through collective approaches through cooperatives in the Netherlands from 2016. Some of these points I'll pick up again later in the presentation. And then we had a presentation from Spain about water management and irrigation and how they're going about trying to improve the efficiency of water use in Spain in the face of some significant climate challenges. We then moved on to our panel discussion, which involved a reminder from DG Klima about the mainstreaming commitments that we have for climate change throughout all funding instruments in the EU, but which includes the Rural Development Policy, and also the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, which gave us another good example of some bottom-up collective type approaches of farmers joining together to deliver biodiversity outcomes. In this particular instance, farm and birds. I forget now the exact bird, but a very positive outcomes. The yellow hammer, I've remembered. So I've divided my. Well, perhaps if we start at the strategic and then we'll move into the specific. So first of all, the key question that came up, and I think it's worth just reiterating that to the floor, was how can we achieve the overarching objective of the CAP in relation to the environment, which is to enhance the environmental performance of EU agriculture, and how can we do this by making the best use of the measures available in both pillars, and that we need to really think about using all the different instruments and measures that we have at our disposal in a complementary and mutually reinforcing way. So that is a key issue that we discussed a little bit, touched upon, but that's something that really needs to be thought about when designing and then subsequently implementing RDPs. And we also discussed about the real importance of upfront assessing the needs that there are in your local areas in terms of environment and climate change, and then making sure that resources are targeted to those needs in order to get best value for money, and using the measures creatively to do so. Then we focused in on the delivery and the specifics, and we looked at the opportunities that were offered by some of the new tools we have available. And because of the focus of the presentations, perhaps we focus mostly on the cooperation measure and this whole idea that's being put forward in the Netherlands about delivering agri-environment type benefits through a collective approach. So there's quite a large-scale significant change in focus in the Netherlands in terms of delivering the entire agri-environment programme through cooperatives. But of course we were reminded that there are lots of different examples all over Europe at the moment of of farmers being brought together or coming together to work at a landscape scale, at a territorial scale to deliver outcomes. And the RSPB example is another good example here. One of the critical points that was raised here was that advice, particularly one-to-one advice on the ground, is absolutely critical in terms of the success of some of these schemes, particularly to increase buy-in from farmers, but also to improve compliance with what is needed to be achieved. A greater understanding of what you're trying to achieve often delivers better outcomes in the ground. Then we talked about using measures in a joined-up way, in an integrated way. So the importance of not just focusing on one measure to deliver the environment, not just focusing on the agri-environment climate measure, but thinking creatively about how to use, to think about the objectives that you're trying to achieve and use multiple measures, whether that's investments, whether that's agri-environment, forestry measures, and advice, for example. Then we come to the climate part. We talk very much about climate mainstreaming and this commitment, this 20% commitment, but that it's perhaps importantly, it's a cross-cutting objective for rural development programmes. It's not just something that is linked to environment and linked to the agri-environment climate measure. It's about identifying the climate challenges, both adaptation and mitigation challenges that there are in your local areas, and then thinking about the full range of measures that can be used to address those challenges. And again, this link with the Pillar 1 measures, I think, it was reinforced again. This was a theme that recurred and recurred. What you're delivering through RDPs has to build on the Pillar 1 plus compliance requirements and the green direct payments. Another issue that came up was this whole, when delivering for the environment and for climate change, you're having to balance all the time what you're trying to deliver alongside also trying to maintain a competitive and productive agricultural sector and also trying to achieve rural employment. And we had a bit of a discussion about what that meant for the focus and the use of different measures. What that meant in terms of how we should be focusing. When was it appropriate to focus on extensive agriculture? When was it appropriate to focus on improving resource efficiency, and how you could integrate all these issues together? On the theme of integration again, of course, it's not just integration of measures within rural development policy, but it's integration at a wider scale too. There are a number of interesting examples who'd used funding for rural development policy from ENRD, from LIFE, and there are other possibilities of using the structural funds as well. So the message was made about thinking creatively about how to use the range of funds that are available at the European and national level. And then we came on to a few technical issues. I'll quickly elaborate. It's not comprehensive here. We talked about the whole difficult issue of avoiding double funding between what you're funding under Pillar 1 green direct payments and then the environmental payments in Pillar 2. We talked about equivalent measures and the issues around those. We also talked about payments for areas of natural constraint and what the types of eligibility criteria that could or may not be permitted, and told there's a guidance document forthcoming for managing authorities on that. There was some issues raised about trying to deliver flexible and innovative approaches towards delivering environmental outcomes, and the limitations or the barriers that sometimes come in the way of that from some of from administrative quarters, I suppose. So some of the things like trying to think about how to implement outcome-focused schemes, but the administrative costs associated with that, and particularly associated with some of the monitoring and control issues, can be a little bit, can be very high, and of course there's always a pressure to reduce those. So there's a balance or some solutions that need to be found between gaining efficiency in delivery, but also being able to deliver those environmental outcomes. And the same issue came up in terms of flexibility with monitoring and control requirements, particularly in relation to collective type agreements, which are agreed is a very interesting way forward, but tricky issues arising in monitoring and control. And then just to finish, I think always good to finish with monitoring and evaluation, but the importance of that was underlined, particularly to ensure that outcomes can really be demonstrated, so that we can demonstrate to the wider public why this funding is delivering what it's delivering and is so important.